Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
All right, welcome to another segment of Connection Corner where we use alliteration to puff up our egos. No, I'm kidding. This is a way for us to connect with you.
We're a big fan of alliteration here at the Food Freedom Fertility podcast, and we've extended it to Connection Corner.
Okay, the point of this is not for Sophia and I to be like, yay, another glowing review.
Aren't we so proud of ourselves?
No, we want to connect with you, and we want you to also get a chance to be like, have a voice in the conversation, right? Like, you connect with us, leave us a review, helps the algorithm promote the podcast to others. But it also is a way for you to hear your name.
We really are listening and really do care about how this podcast is touching your life.
All right, Mercedes, we're gonna shout out to you in your review from May of last year. Take it away, Soph.
Every woman needs to listen. That's the title of Mercedes' 5-star review today. She says, I love this podcast, and I love that the hosts bring humor into it, making it fun to listen to. As a 23-year-old planning on having kids in a couple years, I love listening to this podcast, especially those that give me tips on what to do now to increase my chances of having healthy pregnancies one day. Thanks for empowering women who are at the beginning of their journey like me. Mercedes, you are awesome. Caitlin, what would your life have been if you would have been like Mercedes and at 23 years old started to dive into this kind of stuff?
It would have been so much easier. And also applaud Mercedes if you feel like you have a life partner that you want to have children with, because who I was dating at 23, that would have been a dumpster fire. So you get so many kudos. But yes, like, it's never too early to start planning for this. And we're so proud of you, Mercedes. And also thank you for your glowing review.
Welcome to another episode of Food Freedom and Fertility. We are your hosts, Sophia, Pavia, and Caitlin Johnson, both registered dietitian nutritionists, both specializing in women's health and fertility with a season of functional medicine sprinkled in. And we are here today with a guest named Caitlin Dillon.
Welcome, Caitlin.
Hello, thank you.
This is that fun episode. It's where Sophia, at least as we're recording on my screen, is sandwiched in between two Caitlins. It's her favorite
a
type
Caitlin
of
sandwich, and I'm the meat.
So, listeners, if you listened as far back as the first couple episodes of season 2, you will know that this is Caitlin's third episode, second appearance on our podcast. At the end of season 1, we did kind of a raffle where we were going to choose somebody from our audience to come on and kind of have like a, let's talk about your fertility story, almost like a live appointment with Sophia and Caitlin with no HIPAA compliance at all. Which was funny that we found
laying it all bare.
Another healthcare worker to become this person for us. So if you are just tuning in, you may like to go back and listen to those first 2 episodes of season 2 to hear Caitlin's fertility story up to this point. But shall we kind of give what's the word when somebody tells you the end of the story?
The reveal?
Yeah. Should we give them like the end before the beginning?
Let's do it. Reveal it. Reveal it.
I am pregnant.
Woo! We are so happy. Okay, let's see the belly.
Yeah,
show us the
most
bump.
beautiful belly.
Oh, girl, it's beautiful. For those of you who are just listening and aren't on YouTube watching, it's so perfect and pristine. It almost looks like one of the fakey bellies that they use in like TV, like one that's like made out of like foam rubber or something. Like
I like to call it an egg belly.
It is adorable.
Belly.
You look
Thank
absolutely beautiful, and we are thrilled for you. So obviously our listeners are getting out their maps and compasses and sextants, and they're like, tell me the path you've trod to find this treasure buried within. So we want to know what happened in between. I mean, we know what happened, but we want to know
what else
what
happened?
went on. How has this miracle befallen your family? Tell us all the juicy deets from when we last spoke in our second episode of season 2 to where we are now.
I mean, where we left, like, I'm going to interject a little bit. We left with like questions. Is there endometriosis? Right? That was something Sophia brought up on the episode, I think.
That was my big question.
I think it was heavily hinted at. I actually had to go back and listen to that episode because infertility, you go through so much and there are so many things that happen before, during, and after. Yeah. But it's
in the cervical situation.
Yes. You had the L cervix.
Yes. So it's all so telling and kind of emotional going back, thinking about it, because I walked like a duck and talked like a duck for endometriosis, and hopefully that's not giving too much away too soon, but everything was kind of pointing to that. But I think in the whirlwind of doctors and tests and questions and infertility, it's like, I didn't know what I was looking at. But I think both of you were onto something with that. And a lot of the suggestions that you both made, I took, and I think it really helped. There's a lot that happened.
Well, something worked, because there's a baby in there.
She is a Bruin.
Oh, girl.
I'm giving it all away in the beginning.
Yeah.
What a wonderful,
so
wonderful thing. Oh my gosh. Caitlin and I's first babies were girls, and oh man,
They're just a great way to start.
They are truly, truly. Okay, so lay it on us. Let's hear it. Let her rip.
Okay, so last time we talked, I was asking, I'll start with this because this was kind of where things left off. I was asking questions if you guys had ever heard of the company Fertility. And
the people overseas, right?
Right, in Greece. So we ended up doing the Fertility testing. We did the whole shebang and tried to look at everything. We did the microbial dysfunction testing and the immunodysfunction testing. Came back, I did have endometritis, a few different strains of bacteria, and my immune system, it showed like that I had an overactive immune system, and it's a little more complicated than I can understand, but I know for sure I had like high Th1 and Th2 markers. When I talked to Dr. V about this, he said that this is a sign of inflammation, your immune system reacting to something, but it could be many things. And one of the things that we talked about was the correlation of endometriosis with that kind of immune system reaction to inflammation, and the combination of endometriosis with endometritis. So he said, this is the antibiotic I recommend. Take it for 2 weeks and we'll retest.
What was the antibiotic?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that.
Of course. Our listeners are wanting to know. They're like trying to draw a treasure map for themselves right now.
I want to say that it was
doxycycline.
Yes. 2 weeks. And so that was last year. So I did the fertility testing, talked to Dr. V, did the 2 weeks of antibiotics, thought it's too good to be true. And I actually got pregnant early last year, first time ever, but shortly after miscarried. So
heartbreak.
Yeah. And it was conflicting because we were shocked that we got pregnant and we were grateful for that. But it felt like the pregnancy that we're waiting for just slipped through our fingertips, like how did this come and go so quickly and get away from us? But in the midst of all that, when we talked to Dr. V, and tell me if I'm going too fast, because there's so much that happened in between.
Just go for it.
Okay. So, at the time we had spoken, the three of us had spoken last, I was seeing an acupuncturist who was really encouraging us to seek IVF. And I think at the time we were Like, we'll talk to anybody. I don't know if that's the route for us, but we'll talk to anybody. Things with Dr. V seem too good to be true with just take 2 weeks of antibiotics and maybe this could be something. So actually during that time of like taking antibiotics and talking to Dr. V, we did talk to an IVF doctor that my acupuncturist recommended. And she spent a lot of time with us and she said, I really think you have endometriosis. And I think that's important to know for sure before you pursue IVF, because it's going to change the treatment plan if you do. And we want this to be the most successful. And she said, I have a good friend, an old colleague that is an OB at Kaiser, which is what we have, that I would trust to do surgery on me. I think you should go talk to her. See if she can remove that polyp that you have in your uterus, because I have this small polyp, and see if while she's in there, she can look for endometriosis. And she said, because if you do have endometriosis and we do IVF, we're going to put you on Lupron and put you into like a medical menopause for a few months to calm everything down. So then IVF seemed even more deterring because we didn't want to go through all of that. It just seemed so much more involved. Yeah. So I felt really encouraged at that point after talking to you guys, after talking to Dr. V, after talking to this IVF doctor, that in all actuality, like could have just been like, yep, let's do IVF. I think you're a great candidate. But she really took time and talked to us about it and said, I think there's more exploring to do, which I've never had a doctor really encourage me to explore more, without treatment. So I met with this doctor through Kaiser, felt really comfortable with her, talked about like excision versus
ablation.
And she was on board with excision, which made me feel really good. And she said, yeah, while we're in there, we'll do laparoscopic, we'll do the hysteroscopy to try to remove the polyp, so on and so forth. And so we did the surgery and she found stage 1 and stage 2 endometriosis on the ligaments that hold my uterus, which really explains my cervix now.
It was being pulled backwards, like the uterus was stuck with these endometrial adhesions, and that was causing the misshapen cervix.
Exactly. And she said specifically and I don't know the technical term for it, but the ligament in the back of my uterus on the left-hand side had a deep infiltrating lesion on it, which makes sense because everything was being pulled to the left. She found it on my uterus and she found it on my bladder and my rectum.
Boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
All the good parts.
Yeah. So she removed all of that, and 2 cycles later I was pregnant.
Stop. Oh my God.
I can't tell you
pregnant
how
in
many.
The wild. So you weren't
wild.
using medication. You didn't do IVF.
So
you didn't do any kind of crazy Franken-science. You just got pregnant in the wild.
We got pregnant in the wild. The only thing that I was taking, which was one of the recommendations that the three of us, both of you had talked about the last time, was if you can find a doctor that can prescribe progesterone.
Ding, ding, ding.
So the doctor who did my surgery said, I'll prescribe you progesterone. You've already been through enough. Yeah. So I already had it on hand. So as soon as I got that positive pregnancy test, actually, I think I started taking it like 3-DPO, because at that point, that's where I was
right when
at.
you want to start.
Right.
So that's 3 days post-ovulation for those of you who are new to fertility acronyms. DPO is days post-ovulation.
Yeah. So that was the only thing I was taking was the prescription progesterone, and I took that for 12 weeks.
Holy macaroni! That is so amazing.
And how far along are you now?
I'm almost 26 weeks now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. Okay. We're going to leave you on this high for a second, go hear from our first sponsors, and we'll be back with more of this amazing story.
We're taking a break to talk about our sponsor, Fertility Cloud. In working with hundreds of you ladies, we have noticed a problem that has come up. I know it's come up for me, Caitlin. It's come up for your clients as well. And that is not only finding a doctor who is going to know how to help you, but one that wants to. We have a lot of issues here, and sometimes getting a simple blood test or actually getting a medication or talking to someone who's actually an expert in fertility can not only take an insane amount of time, but it can feel like you're fighting your doctor.
Yeah, or you're playing like Russian roulette to get in front of somebody who actually cares. We are so excited to be partnering with Fertility Cloud because they have a solution for all of these frustrations. Just last week, I had a client that needed right now care, and we couldn't get her in front of an OB. And she got a same day appointment with Fertility Cloud and spoke to a reproductive endocrinologist and had a prescription that she needed in her hand hours later. This is a solution that our industry desperately needs, and we are so excited to present to you.
So if you're in a remote area and you have to drive 4 hours to go see a doctor, or if you've been to multiple doctors and none of them seem to really listen or really care or want to take an approach that works for you, start up with My Fertility Cloud.
My Fertility Cloud has provided us a link, so check it out in the show notes. That will get you $25 off your first visit with one of their providers.
We're taking a quick break from this episode to talk about one of our sponsors, the Prenatal Nutrition Library.
We love the Prenatal Nutrition Library. It's a searchable database and app, which means you have answers within seconds and peace of mind that what you're eating during pregnancy is both safe and nutritious.
It's almost like having your own personal pregnancy dietitian in your back pocket that's going to not only tell you, is it safe to eat this? How much of that should I have? Yada, yada, yada. But give you actual meal plans so you know how to put it all together onto your plate today. And the meal plans are trimester specific, meaning, some women are kind of nauseous in their first trimester and maybe they need specific foods to help combat that. Prenatal Nutrition Library has got you covered. Or the fact that your baby's brain is growing rapidly in your third trimester and you need your nutrition to support that. Prenatal Nutrition Library meal plans has got you covered there too.
This is evidence-based information. Registered dietitians are in this app weekly answering members' questions. There's an exclusive podcast within the app that's run by Ryan, who is the prenatal dietitian that founded this entire thing. It's a wealth of knowledge and resources and will take you far beyond that one-page handout your doctor handed you that actually probably has out-of-date information about eating in pregnancy.
So head on over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library as soon as you get your big fat positive. Well, okay, first message me and Caitlin so we can do a happy dance with you. Then head over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library to get clear strategies to meet your nutrient needs, as well as to take the stress out of confirming what's safe and most optimal for you and your baby while you're pregnant. Use code FFF20 for 20% off.
All right, and we're back. We cannot wait to hear more of Caitlin's story. So you gave us sort of like the wave tops of what happened in between when we last spoke to you and now, 26 weeks pregnant in the wild, used progesterone during the early weeks of your pregnancy to help things progress. So what else? I mean, what else went on in there? I know the story is really deep, so go a little deeper and share more.
Yeah. So that was like you said, the wave tops, the highlight reel of even just the last year. But with the Fertility testing, Dr. V recommended the antibiotics, 2 weeks of antibiotics, but also he suggested to take a oral and vaginal pre and probiotic. And so I started on that too. And I think that has made, even still, a world of difference. That's something I'm still doing. It's a little bit controversial, and I couldn't get a straight answer from anyone if I should still be doing like a vaginal pre and probiotic.
Where did you get this from?
Online. And actually, the one that I chose to go with that had the best reviews, that I did the most research on, the IVF doctor that we talked to, that was her number one recommendation, because I had asked her for recommendations. And that was the
called?
one.
Where'd you get it?
So it's called Vagi Biome.
We're in the wrong industry. I feel like, Sophia, you could do so good with something like that.
Vagi Biome, to help you grow a beautiful vegetable garden.
I'm telling you, we are in the wrong business.
Oh my gosh.
But you know what? I'm telling you, these pre and probiotics are incredible. Obviously, you should be doing everything that you can for your microbiomes through, lifestyle.
Googling it right now.
Yeah, but very basic ingredients. I know it sounds silly to talk about, but seriously,
it's
it's made
great.
a
No,
world of
it's not
difference.
silly
not
at all.
silly.
They called it vegetable gut, or what is it called?
Veggie bio.
That what you did and what you took is totally, in our opinion, wonderful and normal.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
and
just
the right
name.
move. We're just laughing at the name, not at you for using this.
I know. The name could have been better.
Honestly,
Could have been better.
The best part is why did you have to pop up? The best part is the little part of the biome in their logo.
Is it a vegetable vagina?
No, but it's just like makes you wonder, what the heck am I going to put inside of me? Which
I know.
maybe is
Okay.
the point. Like, ooh, that's going to float up my vag.
It looks like Dippin' Dots.
Exactly. So just get a little Dippin' Dots and, on up in there. So did you use this
Vegetable
just
Dippin' Dots.
suppository, or did you also do this as oral or a different oral?
No, so I did that specifically as a suppository. I also started an oral pre and probiotic. I have liked, now all these names are going to sound so funny, but I liked the Good Girl brand.
It's really not as funny as vegetable or whatever, the Veggie Bloom.
Vegetable.
Vegetable.
The vegetable one.
But so I started both of those, but really, so that one, thinking back, there was a regimen they had me do, like 3 suppositories for 3 days. And then after that, it's kind of maintenance, I guess is the word I could use. So after sex, after my period, after anything that's going to disrupt my vaginal microbiome.
Your veggie garden.
My vegetable garden.
That's the episode title.
Caitlin's vegetable garden.
That is more appropriate than you guys
It sounds
know.
like, that guy, like John Zablobsky or whatever his name is, that like reads kindergartners' homeworks on Instagram.
Oh, yes.
That's what this sounds like. Vegetable
this is so
garden.
good.
This is how I fed my vegetable garden and grew my baby.
And now, were these recommendations Dr. V's recommendations, or is this how Veggie Biome recommends on their products?
This was what Dr. V recommended, and then I got double confirmation from the IVF doctor that we talked to. She recommended the same routine.
Hey, there are a bunch of people that listen in LA. Do you mind name dropping that doctor that wasn't just, let me send you straight to IVF?
Yes. So the IVF doctor we talked to, she's located in Irvine, and her name is Dr. Kashani with a K.
Awesome.
And the doctor at Kaiser in Irvine that has helped me so much, so much, is Dr. Ganamati with a G.
Okay. Awesome.
She's been the most helpful doctor.
Is she your OB? Is she who's providing care and going to deliver baby?
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
That's amazing.
It's been a first full circle moment, even with her, since she's been in the picture. Because she was really there for me a lot during my miscarriage. So, I had talked to her. It all happened at the same time, which probably is why the story is so condensed, because so much happened at one time. It was like we got the results from Fertility, we talked to IVF, we got our prescription, we got pregnant. I met this new doctor with Kaiser. But during my miscarriage, Dr. Ganamati with Kaiser was the one that was helping me order more labs and kind of walk me through that near the end. So that was really helpful. And then we took a few months because honestly, the miscarriage just seemed to go on for so long, and I've never had a miscarriage before. I'm sure everybody's is different, but it just took what seemed like forever at the time for my levels to go down. So
that's most people's story who their baby passes naturally. That's usually what we see.
Yeah.
I was just looking up your labs. Your progesterone was low, but at that point you were already miscarrying, so that's normal. Your TSH was 2.88 and your vitamin D was 54. So, I mean, really pretty close to normal and perfect in terms of the vitamin D.
Yeah. And that's been another thing. I mean, there's been so many things that we had talked about the last time we talked that I'm so glad you both suggested before we even really knew it was endometriosis, that I think has helped along the way.
Let's talk about that.
Vitamin D for sure. So I'm still taking 9,000 nanograms per milliliter of vitamin D.
IU probably.
IU. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
IU.
Okay. Yeah. We just don't want people to,
IU.
because that would
we
be
knew what you meant, but we
astronomical.
just don't want our listeners to try to.
Your level doesn't have to be at 9,000. Yeah. So I'm still taking that much. I decreased it per the recommendation of my doctor at first when I got pregnant, but then naturally my vitamin D decreased as well, and I got pregnant during fall, so I wasn't outside, and so I made the decision to continue taking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So increasing my vitamin D, I started taking Fullwell's fish oil supplement as well. And then I upped my magnesium by using the needed hydration multipliers, which we had talked about too.
I just drank one of those myself.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's a great segue into our... No, I'm just kidding.
So I think all that supplementation has been really helpful.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And honestly, do you know what? That is going to segue us into our next sponsor break. So let's hear from our sponsor. I bet you can't guess who it is. And we will hear more of your torrid tale when we get back.
Hey guys, we're taking a break from our episode, and I want to talk about something that's super confusing. When you head down the supplement aisle and you're looking for a prenatal, and on the prenatal bottle itself, it says, do not take if you're trying to conceive, pregnant, or breastfeeding. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, it says talk to your doctor if you are pregnant, could be pregnant, breastfeeding, postpartum, whatever. And every supplement has this. You go down the supplement aisle, you go shopping on whatever supplement website, and there's a disclaimer on every bottle of every single thing, which means that everything that you've been taking your whole life long is now a big question mark about whether or not you are potentially harming yourself by taking something where you're trying to be healthy. So that is why we partnered with Needed. Needed is a perinatal nutrition supplement brand that has a wide array of products specifically designed for women who are pregnant, trying to become pregnant, breastfeeding, or postpartum. So it's not just that these products like can work if you're in that situation, or oh, it's probably okay if you take it while you're trying to conceive. No. These products are researched, they are formulated, and they are put together specifically for women who are trying to conceive, pregnant, breastfeeding, and postpartum.
This answers so many questions. I always get asked, like, what can I take? It's cold and flu season. What's safe? Needed has an immune support. That's safe whether you're trying to conceive, pregnant. It's even safe for your little ones.
And it's not just immune support. They've got collagen, they've got hydration support, they have digestive support, they have prenatal multi. They even made a line for dudes.
Needed is somebody we're really proud to be partnering with. So head over to their website and use code FFF20 for 20% off your order.
So Caitlin, we're back from our break, and we want to know the drama, the joy, the excitement, all the ins and outs, the highs, the lows of finding out you're pregnant after this wild journey that you just went through. So tell us what that was like for you, what that is like for you.
So it definitely seemed too good to be true. You know, I mean, I wasn't, you're always anticipating, but you're never necessarily expecting it because you've just seen it not happen so many times, I think. So what I did and what I would usually do around the time of testing way too early, is I would wake up at like, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and need to go to the bathroom, but I wanted to use my first morning urine. So I would take the test, leave it in the bathroom, go back to bed, which would just then give me an invalid test once I finally looked at it. But I tested at 9 days post-ovulation, which is way early, but anybody who's listening to this that's been trying to conceive long enough knows it's so hard not to start testing as soon as after you have sex. So 9 DPO, I took a test and I took it, went back to bed, woke up maybe 2 hours later, and it was a completely dry test. It was like one of those dipstick tests.
The ones that you get when you test all the time and you don't want to have a mountain of plastic waste and spend your life savings on tests.
Right.
We're familiar. We're familiar.
Yeah. You can get a box of like 3,000 tests for like $10. So I looked at it closely and like inspected it like I always do. And there's a very, 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 very faint shadow on it. And I said, that's for sure a line. Because
There's
usually
nothing.
it's just nothingness.
Yeah.
Right. So this was a Sunday morning. So I woke my husband up and I like turned on all the lights and I was like, there's a line on this. Do you see this line? And he's like, no, there's nothing on there. And I was like, yes, there is. I know that there is. And I took another one and like watched it as it developed and another very, very, very faint line. So I continued to test into the next day and the next day. And it just got increasingly like incredibly darker. And so I was so excited, but felt so cautious at this point because of what had happened earlier in the year. And so I contacted my doctor as soon as possible and started requesting lab work so that I could watch my levels rise because of how I am and everything I've been through. I wanted like the data, you know what I mean? I wanted to know for sure. I guess it sounds silly thinking about it out loud, but it's like you want to see a positive progression before you get too excited, because I think everybody expects, because of movies and maybe people who haven't struggled getting pregnant, they get a positive pregnancy test and they're like, I'm pregnant. This is great. This is what I expected. But when you struggle for so long, I think there's so much caution and like reservation. I mean, I was excited, but it was a slow progression of excitement because I was also just kind of scared, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a loss of innocence when it comes to infertility.
Yeah.
And pregnancy loss is this belief that a pregnancy equals a baby every time.
Yeah.
And, physiologically, yes, but not a baby to keep and bring into your arms and have forever, that's going to have this very long and healthy life always.
Yeah.
That's the piece that's lost.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think my husband was on the same page, and he's such a realist that I think he was saying the same thing and saying like, let's, talk to your doctor. Let's get more labs drawn. Let's see what's actually happening, because, there have been so many times, whether we were getting pregnant or not, where we had so much hope and then we had so much letdown, and then we had so much hope and then so there's so much, like you're saying, there's just so much reservation and a guard up and an innocence lost. But I think the big moment for us was after we got the second, HCG lab draw, my numbers had tripled and I felt really good about that. And my progesterone looked great.
Yay.
So I set up like a whole little thing like on our bed for him to come home to see that our numbers had tripled. And I bought a little book and, tried to do a little, it wasn't a surprise, but it was like a happy moment.
Yeah. A celebration for the two of you. So what was his reaction to all that stuff?
He was just beside himself. And I think that feeling and that like awe, I see that on his face all the time still. And I feel like that too, where we're just like, oh my gosh, it's actually happening. It's actually happening. Like a pinch me moment, and just like a lightness, a weight that's been lifted off, is what I saw. But we were both just so elated and excited.
Something
and
that
happy.
has touched me about your story. I mean, after you came on the podcast, I feel like I developed a friendship with you. Began following you on Instagram and, of course, much of the highlight reel of someone's life. But even what you shared with us on the show about, being able to teach something to the children's ministry, and you're very involved. I don't know if it's with like actual nieces and nephews or close friends that you kind of consider that way. But I think a lot of times in long drawn out fertility stories where you're just so expectant and so hopeful and so hurting, there's like the light and the dark side of that, where it's like, God, I want to be a part of this, but this is really hard for me. And I'm sure you experienced both sides of that, but from the outside looking in, Caitlin is somebody that shows up anyway and pours into people. And I'm sure there's some of that that's a little bit just like nature versus nurture. And I think that because I know what you do for a living, but that is a part of your makeup. And I'm sure that didn't always feel easy. I'd love to hear a little bit of like, what did you do with your heart? What did you do with your mind? What did the hard moments look like? Because it's easy for somebody to listen to this and go like, wow, you know, this is great. I'm hearing the stories where it was hard, but now I'm hearing the end story. And we want that for you listeners, because we want to give you pictures of hope and to give you illustrations of what it looked like to continue digging deeper and advocating for yourself and looking to the right professionals, which Caitlin's a really good example of those things. But kind of like maybe not the highlight reel or what you did to be able to show up in those ways that were important to you still.
Yeah. I'll try to talk about it without getting too emotional, because I
get emotional. We will write with you. Please don't be ashamed. We're emotional people here. We love it.
Well, I think during those times, and just thinking back over the last 3 years, what I would always try to tell myself is like, I know I'm eventually going to be a mom, and I don't know how or what that's going to look like. Or when that's going to happen, but it's got to happen because I feel this in my bones. You know, I told someone recently, it's like,
relate to that so deeply.
Like, yeah, being a mom and becoming a mom isn't just like you get pregnant and have a baby. It's beyond biological. It's spiritual. You feel it everywhere. You know, that yearning is what makes you a mom, you know? So I knew I had that. But what I would always try to hold on to is that time is going to come. It has to. So what do I want this time to look like? Because if I just cut people off because it's too hard, or I don't show up to the things because it's too hard, the day I find out I'm pregnant, or when I actually do have that baby, I still want to have all these people in my life. I still want to know and go back and know that I was a part of these events and all these other kids' lives, and, you know, my friends and my nephews and all of that. And that's what I thought about, is I can't just, it's natural to feel grief, and it's natural to feel so bitter and angry. And that's okay, because that's what's actually happening. And I don't think anyone should, you know, feel like they need to just be positive all the time, even if that's what's coming out from like what's showing on the outside. It's okay to not feel that way. But my outlook and opinion is you still should show up to those, at least most of those things if you can, because you're going to want to look back and know that this affected your life so much, but it didn't get in the way of what your life is going to look like once you do have that baby in your arms. You know what I mean? Because there's so many situations where I can look back and, you know, I went to a baby shower the day I started miscarrying, which was probably, you know, you've got to have boundaries with stuff, but I wasn't sure what was going on. And it's like, it's such a fine line between having boundaries, but also knowing that I'm not going to let this define me. Like, I'm not going to let infertility define me. I'm going to show up for the people in my life, because I'm going to expect these people to show up for me too. And I think that's a good expectation to have. I think if you don't show up to things and you don't,
just shrink your world.
Yeah.
You shrink your world until all that's left is you and your uterus. And people do that, and they think that they're making some healthy choice, and they think it's some sort of holy mission to preserve themselves to where they never have a negative feeling and never cry or anything like that. And it's just not a meaningful way to live. It's very self-serving, and it's sometimes necessary. I mean, is it self-serving for somebody to lay home when they have the flu instead of going to your birthday party? Like, it isn't. Like, they need to rest to be well. And that same mentality does extend into these things. Is sometimes when things are very acute, you do need to
they need to stay away
rest
to
or
not
take breaks
infect
or whatever.
you. And honestly, like, if you're really struggling and the whole thing's going to be about you at somebody else's baby shower, maybe you should stay home. Like, there's no only right.
Yeah, you don't want to go
wrong.
there and be a rain cloud.
No. And I
But
think a good way to
making that your way of life to
yeah.
where now this is how I interact with people is through the lens of my losses and what I don't have and how hard it is for me. That is such a trap.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a good way to kind of handle those situations is, okay, I'm having a hard time and I've got a baby shower to go to. Maybe I don't go to the baby shower, but I get lunch with this person and give them their gift then. Or maybe I show up to the baby shower, drop the gift off, but I got to go, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times that's what situations looked like, whether it was a first birthday or a baby shower or something, but not just completely Xing the event or the person because it's too hard. You just figure out how it can look different, but you're still showing up so that your life isn't completely altered by this horrible season. And you know that you're going to get out of it. And looking back, I'm glad that I handled things that way. I don't always think I handled every situation the best, but I'm glad I still showed up because that's what I would have wanted, whether that was happening to me or not, you know?
Amen. Wow, you are so strong and so inspiring. That is really, really inspiring. I mean, truly, that's
Thank you.
really wonderful. And I admire you greatly for that. And I think that a lot of women can draw from that strength and be inspired by what you're saying as well. Because if you're listening to this, you may still be in the season that Caitlin was in herself 6 months ago, 8 months ago.
Yeah, but all of that to say, there were days that more days, more often than happy days that were just hard, really hard. The constant negative tests, or the miscarriage, or just talking to doctors that don't care, or talking to friends that don't understand. Everybody getting pregnant around you. I mean, a lot of that was happening constantly, and it was difficult, really, really difficult. And I remember my husband and I had a conversation about how infertility kind of hit us at different times. Like it was really hard for me. There was a season where everybody like in our community was getting pregnant, and it sounds dramatic, but everybody like got pregnant all at once. And that was really, really, really hard for me. And it didn't seem as hard for my husband. But then the next year came all the first birthdays. And that wasn't as hard for me, but that was really hard for my husband. And we figured out it's like when you get pregnant as a woman or you watch another woman get pregnant, that's when she becomes a mom. But then for a dad, it's all the first birthdays when you're watching dads and your dad friends, your male friends get really involved. That's when it's really hard. That was when it was really hard for my husband. So it was like a lot of grief. And sometimes with your spouse, you're on the same page and sometimes you're not. And sometimes it's harder for you. Sometimes it's harder for him. And sometimes it's like hard altogether. But it hit us differently. And those times were hard too, trying to understand like, why is this hitting you now kind of thing,
And grief is kind of like that. It's not linear and it's not always predictable. And you just sometimes don't know what's gonna tip it off, Yeah. Like sometimes it's like something so small as you have like an Amazon auto renew on something. And it's like your pregnancy tests or something like that. And they come in the mail and you're like, God bless. There they are. And it's like you're just sad for weird reasons. Weird things tip you off, or things that you maybe wouldn't even think. Like you were fine at the baby shower, you were fine at the first birthday party, but then you saw like a Gap commercial and there was like a little girl playing guitar with her dad and you're like, oh my God, that just leveled me. And that was when everything fell apart. Caitlin, I think you have a couple more questions for her that we'll do when we get back from our next sponsor break. Hey, it's me again, Sophia Pavia, registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in women's health, fertility, and optimal progesterone production. And I'm interrupting an episode of my own podcast to tell you about my online course called Ovulation Unlocked. So if you've been listening to our podcast episodes, you've probably heard a lot of things about basal body temperature, cervical mucus, cervical position, and tracking your fertility. Well, I have designed a 90-minute self-paced online course, which I titled Ovulation Unlocked, that puts all of that together and teaches you how to be the expert on your own fertility from home. This course is designed to put you in the driver's seat of your own fertility, not only so you can know what's going on with your body on any given day, but so that if you need medical help, you can show up to the appointment informed and ready to communicate. Too frequently, us women show up to our doctor's appointments and just say something like, I want to have a baby. And the doctor looks at you and says, good for you. Stop using birth control, start taking a prenatal, come back in a year if you're not pregnant. And that's all we get. However, Ovulation Unlocked puts you in the driver's seat, puts you in control of your fertility to where if you need help, you can show up to that appointment informed and ready to communicate your needs. So if you want to become the expert on your own body and your own fertility, head on over to my Instagram bio and tap the Ovulation Unlocked link today.
Hey guys, I am really excited to announce that we are doing a giveaway where we are partnering with Needed. They're a complete nutritional system for fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, and women's health. This is the supplement brand that is sponsoring us in this season of the Food Freedom Fertility Podcast. And they are very generously offering a complete plan. So that includes their prenatal, a choice from their omega options, collagen protein, and a pre and probiotic. So 4 different containers of things that are going to help you either in your fertility story or if you're pregnant. These are safe for both cases, even postpartum. So if you are listening to this podcast and you're in any one of those stages, hey girl, welcome. This giveaway is for you. So to enter into the giveaway, what you need to do is go to YouTube. You can get there from either the link in our Instagram, or you can just go to youtube.com and then type in food, freedom, and fertility. You're going to look for our happy little pink logo and you're going to click on it. You get to any episode of this season's podcast, doesn't matter. And what we want you to do is subscribe to that channel. That way you're going to know when a new video drops. These videos are the videos of the audio recording. So if you actually want to feel like you're hanging out with us while we're recording the podcast, girl, you can. So head over to YouTube, hit subscribe. And for you to get one entry, you also need to hop into one of the episodes and either ask a question or leave a comment on the episode. So if you're watching the episode, you just kind of scroll down and then click on that comment section. You also need to go to Needed, their Instagram page, and follow their Instagram. Okay, so one entry equals following Needed on their Instagram, going to YouTube. We're going to check these things, going to YouTube and subscribing to our YouTube channel and commenting on a video. If you want additional entries, go to a different episode, leave a different question or a different comment. Okay. So we're trying to establish more followers on our YouTube channel with this giveaway. If you would like even more entries, you can head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a written review. Leave us some stars. If you've already done that, then hop on your partner's phone or your mom's or your girlfriend's and leave a rating there. We will choose in about 2 weeks the winner of this, and we will contact you, get your address, and send you a complete plan from Needed. Isn't this exciting? So head over to YouTube, subscribe, Food Freedom and Fertility, leave some comments or questions on videos, follow @Needed on Instagram. And if you want to get additional entries, head over to Apple and leave a review. Now back to our episode.
All right, well, we are back. Listener, I want you to know that we had a little audio hiccup here, and so Caitlin is on a different microphone now. So it may not be the same quality that you were hearing a minute ago before the break, but I encourage you to keep listening and stick through it because we have a couple great questions that we're going to ask her to round out the episode.
So we have discussed that you had a miscarriage prior to your successful pregnancy that you're in the middle of right now. We talked a little bit about how you decided to show up to things with kids or friends. And I know that you had ways to like progress or consider treatment options a little bit differently after your miscarriage, and that kind of overlapped. But there's still a lot of grief in a loss like that. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what that looked like for you and how you overcame that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I leaned on my faith a lot. I think with miscarriage, especially after going through a couple years of just nothingness, it was like this little glimmer of hope. But like I said, just kind of quickly slipped through our fingers right away. And that's what it felt like. It felt like the baby we were waiting for was just like slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't figure out why. I mean, you know that miscarriage is possible and that it can happen, but I think you think when you finally get pregnant that you're finally going to get pregnant, and that's it. And it just didn't happen that way. And honestly, I was a wreck. I know I was frantically reaching out to you, Caitlin, just like, you know, my pregnancy test strips are getting lighter and lighter, and then the bleeding, and I was pretty traumatized. I just couldn't.
I can imagine.
It sounds silly, but I just couldn't believe it. I mean, it sounds silly now looking back because a miscarriage is so common, and unfortunately it can happen to anybody. But I was pretty devastated, and I felt like the only thing I could lean on was my faith. And I actually found a Bible verse that I leaned on really heavily.
Yeah, share it. We'd love that.
Read it?
Yeah.
Oh, please.
So it's Lamentations chapter 3, verses 17 through 24. And I love this. I want to preface this by saying I love this verse for infertility and for miscarriage, no matter what you're going through with infertility, what it looks like. Because a lot of times when you speak to people about what you're going through, people will say things like, God has a plan.
Happened for a reason.
Happened for a reason.
God
Maybe
just
God's
needed another angel in heaven, and so he took your baby.
Someone's trying to teach you, like God's trying to teach you something, all those awful things. And it's like a very toxic positive way to look at things. And I don't think any of that's true. So anyways, I love this verse because it's not extremely positive, but the end of it is. And I think sometimes that's what you need is like, this is awful and I hate this.
Called Lamentations for a reason.
But I'm still going to.
Like the lamenting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Truth.
Aptly put.
So anyways, it's chapter 3, verses 17 through 24. And it says, peace has been stripped away, and I have forgotten what prosperity is. I cry out, my splendor is gone. Everything I had hoped for from the Lord is lost. The thought of my suffering and homelessness is bitter beyond words. I'll never forget this awful time as I grieve over my loss, yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning. I say to myself, the Lord is my inheritance, therefore I will hope in him. And I love that because
that's so beautiful and so perfect for how that feels.
And it's kind of a popular verse, the last part, but you don't actually always get it in the context of how rough life presents itself.
And why you need new mercy in the morning.
Right. And what that gave to me during the time of miscarriage, and even after, to just like try again. And that's what infertility feels like. You're just going to try again after something doesn't work. You just try the same thing or try something new. And it's so scary. And what this gave me was that this is awful. I'm never going to forget this, but maybe I can have a little bit more hope tomorrow. You know, maybe. I don't have it now. The Bible says you don't have to have enough hope. You don't have to have enough faith. You only have to have a little bit, because you're not expected to be this pillar of strength when you're going through something hard. And I think that's why it's so important to rely on your faith, because like people tell you like, oh, you're so strong, you know? And I think when you're going through infertility, you don't necessarily want to hear that all the time because you don't want to have to be strong. But the truth is you don't have to be. You know, it can come from somewhere else, and it's okay to have a bad time or a bad day and just say, you know what, maybe I can try again tomorrow. And that's what this verse gave me. You know, it tells me that God's going to be there tomorrow, and maybe he'll give me enough strength to get through the next day. And that's really what you need when you're going through such a hard time.
So I have a very close friend here. I was just with Sophia in New Orleans, and she was with me while this was kind of happening in real time. But a very close friend of mine, her sister had a baby, and trigger warning, that the baby didn't make it. And it's been this just in the work that obviously we do, we're exposed to a lot of stories, positive and really difficult. And I just I felt the weight of this loss on my heart. It felt like it was happening to me. It's not happened to me, so I actually don't know how to walk through it. But I was reading in Hebrews, and it talks about how we do not have a high priest that is not touched with the feeling of our infirmity. There's a double negative there. So you could say it another way. We do have a high priest that is touched with the feeling of our infirmity, because he was tempted in all points, as we are, yet without sin. So we can come to a throne of grace boldly. And that verse, that want of something. We do not have a high priest that is not touched with the feeling of our infirmity, but was tempted in all points, as we are, yet without sin. So we can come to him when we have a want or a need of strength. And I'm not quoting it perfectly, but there was just something that hit me in that it's not even just the strength. It's the power of the feeling like you can't go on. Jesus Christ knows that feeling too. Yet he showed up without sin. He's not expecting us to do that. That want of strength, that want of an ability to move forward. And I feel like that's really relatable in infertility or any trauma that you've ever walked through. You get up and you think, I'm not going to make it through today. I don't even know how to have enough strength for today. And you have that want of strength, that want of the help. And there, you're listening to 3 Christians in this episode. If you're not Christian, welcome. I'm not sure if you've listened to us before, but it's weaved in here. And, there are solutions for that. Caitlin was just talking about how God could show up with the strength. And you don't need it all. Now, Caitlin also had endometriosis pulling on a ligament that was making her cervix difficult for a doctor to get through in multiple procedures, that another doctor had to come in and excise, cut it away. And that is not to say all of this wasn't God helping her get to those places, but God also didn't just cut that lesion with a miracle. Okay. So there are answers to prayer, and there are solutions, and there are medical answers, and they can all be weaved into your story. I don't know if you heard Caitlin just say this. She and other Caitlin, and I think Sophia, but I don't want to speak for you, don't believe that God put infertility on you to teach you a lesson, to do you harm.
I definitely
God
don't
is the
believe
God
that.
of life.
Because show me one time Jesus did that. When did Jesus walk up to someone and say, do you know what you need is infertility, and touch them with that? When did he do that? If he was the exact representation of God's love, why didn't he walk up to people and say, you need leprosy, you need infertility, you need cancer? Only healing. Only freedom.
Yeah. I think he had the opposite plan for us. I think in a perfect world, everything would happen as it should, but we don't live in a perfect world. But that doesn't mean he can't intervene. And that was one of our big prayers going through everything, was that God would bless us through the people in our lives. And he's done that time and time again, over and over. And my suggestion for anyone going through this that's open to it would be to actively pray. Expect God to show up. Ask him to, and not passively pray, but actively pray on the days that you have the strength to do that. And when you don't, ask other people to. There were so many times where my husband and I went up for prayer in church, or asked other people to pray for us, because it's like you do get to a point where you feel like you've run out of words, and that's okay, where you're not thinking to pray, or you don't have the words to pray, but asking him to show up, but to also just keep moving forward, kind of like Caitlin was saying. It's like we were praying for a miracle, of course, but we knew that that might not look like just being miraculously healed without walking through something else, which for us was surgery.
Mhm.
So you had the surgery, you become pregnant. Very often in stories Sophia and I are exposed to, there's this added layer of anxiety. I know you touched on, like, do we believe this? Is this actually real? Seeing that doubling of HCG giving you kind of like a deep breath. Do you feel like early in this pregnancy, even up to this point, you're waiting for like the next shoe to drop? Are you very confident? Like, how have you managed your mental health with all that?
I think in waves. I think, again, by the grace of God, I've had a good pregnancy.
What does that mean?
As far as my mental health goes, I mean,
okay.
I haven't had any major red flags that have sent me over the edge. Everything has seemed, I guess, instead of saying good pregnancy, I could say like pretty typical. Like, things have seemed to progress in a typical way that has brought me a lot of peace. But what's interesting is there have been times, there's been a couple hiccups. Like, I thought I maybe had a UTI, and I wasn't expecting to feel this way, but I started going through kind of the conveyor belt of Kaiser again, trying to get an appointment, and it really aggravated me more than it should have. And I realized that it was kind of triggering that part of my brain of infertility, of like, I need to talk to somebody. I'm really worried about this. Why am I getting the runaround? So I think there have been moments of anxiety that I haven't expected to come up, but just like grief does, it comes up, and I'm like, where is this feeling of like intense anxiousness coming from when there's like seemingly nothing wrong? You know what I mean? So I have had moments of that that I would relate to infertility for sure.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. We're very inspired and impressed. And this is wonderful. You're really breathing life into my heart and into our listeners' hearts. And so I think that's a beautiful place to leave it. Here you are, 26 weeks pregnant, your miracle baby growing inside you, bigger and stronger every day. You've got a beautiful birth coming up. Lord, may it be. And we're just so pumped for you, and we're so happy that we got to be a part of this. This is Caitlin and I's drug, all right? Like, being a part of stories like this is a drug. Truly, like, I guess I make money doing what I do. I don't know how much of a paycheck I bring home, but that's not why I'm doing it. I do this because I love it, and I love stories like yours. This is what feeds my soul. This is why I do what I do, is women like you. You are already a wonderful mother, and this baby is just going to be born into the most loving family, and I am over the moon for you in every possible way. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Thank you for kind of laying out this roadmap for our listeners, and for opening your heart up so much to us. This is an incredibly valuable gift you've given us and our listeners.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I was so excited to come back and share some of the stuff that's worked and where we're at now.
It's the best. Oh, God, I love being right. No. Just kidding.
And you know what?
That's not why I feel happy here.
Something else that I wanted to mention too, that was a suggestion that you both had made, was body work. And I did see a pelvic floor therapist, and she was incredibly helpful, especially before and after my surgery. So I would definitely recommend that. And that has really kind of bled into pregnancy for me, because there's a lot happening with my pelvic floor now. So,
isn't there?
Yeah. So
there's about to be a lot more happening with it in about, 12 weeks, 14 weeks.
Yes. So true.
All right. Well, let's roll forward into the last section, which is the yeah girl. It can just be I'm 26 weeks pregnant, bitches. Hello.
It's happening. Yeah. I guess my yeah girl would be obviously that I'm pregnant, but we just took a birthing class. And
Which one did you take? Did it have like a name, or was it like your hospital's birthing class?
so we decided to go with the Bradley method.
Great.
And we really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
And I went with that route because I really liked the idea of like husband coached birthing. I think my husband is a really hands-on involved person, and we've been through so much together with, I mean, infertility and all of it. And so he wanted to be really involved and know certain things that he can do to help during the birth process.
Yeah.
So we went that route. It went really well. And I feel like we're feeling confident. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. I've never been through birth before. So my yeah girl is I'm feeling good about birthing my baby.
I'm so happy for you. You can do it.
Yeah.
I am the weenie of weenies, the biggest weenie. And I've had 2 home births. And so if I can do it, anyone can do it. And my births were not easy. They were long labors with a lot of stuff going on. So I'm not one of those ladies that just like sneezes and a baby comes out. Like, not only am I a weenie, but there was a lot to be a weenie about, and I still did it. So you are going to rock this. Definitely. It's going to be awesome.
Cute.
I think that my yeah girl is that my 3-year-old is riding a 2-wheeler. She's on a bike, zooming around. I am so impressed by her, and it has just been wonderful watching her do that. So my yeah girl isn't about me. It's about my daughter, who just hit a big milestone in kid life, like a bicycle, man. That's freedom. So not that she can be free because she's only 3 years old, and so she's constantly supervised while on the bicycle, but she's on her way to independence and freedom with her bicycle, and so feels really happy as a mom.
As free as you can be at 3.
Yeah, exactly.
That says a lot about like her coordination, her body.
Oh, she's unbelievable. The other day after bath, she had like gotten in trouble for like splashing or something. I don't know. And so I was like, all right, everybody out of the tub. Like, I'm done with this. You guys are being a bunch of monkeys. And so I got her out of the tub, and she had like this cup in her hand that we used to like rinse hair and stuff in the bath. She's like all the way outside the tub, and the basket of toys is on like the far corner of the tub. And she's like, okay, mommy, watch me. I can throw it in the basket. And I'm like, okay. And she throws it and just sinks it. Just bam, hits it right in the basket. She's like, hey, I did it. And I'm like, you are amazing. Like, I couldn't have even made that shot. So she is definitely athletically gifted. I'm sure everybody thinks their kid is like so gifted, but I'm pretty sure she's got my husband's athletic acumen, because I am a big turd on the field or the court or whatever, not good at hand-eye coordination. So good for her. That's my yeah girl. All right. Well, thank you again, Caitlin Dillon, for coming on our show today. We are over the moon for you. Listener, if this touched you, or if you would like to touch us, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. What to say? You know what to do. Like, review, subscribe, rate. It helps other women find us. That's our show today. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, it's Sophia. If you love the show and want to continue your health and fertility journey using our resources, head on over to foodfreedomfertility.com for show notes, links to products and services, information about our guests, and our newsletter. Again, that's foodfreedomfertility.com. Thanks for listening.